Listen up, dog owners, it's for you, all you canine lovers. It's your favorite podcast, The Big Bark, with your host Darragh and canine co-hosts Bruno and Milly. The Big Bark.
Hello and a very big welcome back to The Big Bark. And today I'm delighted to say that it's the first time I'm actually recording face to face in quite a while. And today we're joined by John Garrahy of Treaty Veterinary Clinic here in Limerick. John, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Darragh.
Great to have you on. I remember
good to see you.
I think the last time that I did an episode here was with for about a puppy parties a good while back.
Yes, that would be pre-COVID.
That was pre-COVID, yeah. So, John, for people who aren't familiar, give us a bit of background on Treaty Veterinary Clinic. You've been operating for a long time now. So the mid-80s, I believe. Right. So just give us a bit of background for us.
Yeah. Well, Treaty Clinic was established in the mid-80s, and initially it would have been a mixed practice. And by that I mean a practice did farm work and small animal practice. And in the mid-90s then we built a clinic in Thomondgate in Limerick and became a full only small animal practice from early 2000s, so about 20 years ago. Became all small animal in Limerick and another clinic in Shannon and Clare. And today we'd say it's a practice we'll consider ourselves very much kind of community based in the Midwest area. Would be the catchment area of it, and there would be 4 vets, 6 nurses, 2 receptionists, and the practice would have evolved and kind of grown over the years. And we basically provide 24-hour cover 365 days of the year, as other vets do as well. And so that would be the background to it over the years, and developed bit by bit. And we say with the growth of companion animals and pet practice, the practice has grown, and we've invested in updating and upskilling as over the years as well. And I think to give a background to that, we'd say that in practice 25 or 30 years ago there was very little equipment, and extra machines I'd say were mostly used probably in horse practice, less so in anything else. So extra machines came into vogue. Extra machines went from manual development to automatic processing. Extra machines have now evolved where it's all digital, so it's virtually instant. And in conjunction with that, a lot of other equipment has developed in practice as well. Like this practice would have its own laboratory, so that the routine blood tests can all be carried out on site and rapidly, with most results within 20 minutes. 25 or 30 years ago, those samples would have been sent to a laboratory and be waiting 24, 48, 72 hours for results. Ultrasound, which wouldn't have been in existence even, is now part of daily practice of ultrasound for scanning and imaging of organs, pregnancies, chest, cardiology, and that. So all of that has evolved. Again, MRIs and CAT scans and all have become part of practice. And so you have all this upgrading of practices, upgrading of equipment, and I suppose with that and the increased expectations from clients. Again, clients are nowadays looking at programs from Supervet to Australian vets and everything else, and so they're aware of what is achievable and what is possible. And so those expectations have to be matched, and that has been the development of practice to match those expectations. And that is how things have probably evolved in most practices over the last years. So,
and John, like what we're focusing really on today is, I suppose you mentioned there all the different advancements in technology, and with that comes like probably a tremendous increase in cost. So what we want to talk about today is pet insurance and why it's so vital to have pet insurance.
Yes, well, with these developments and with expectations do come costs. So again, pet insurance has evolved. Pet insurance didn't exist years ago. Now there are a number of companies serving the Irish market, and those companies all offer a different range of policies. Policies can be divided into various groups. There are policies from the sort of, you can say, you can get policies from basic to premium level. Some are injury, accident only, some are time limited, and some are lifetime. So if a person is contemplating getting a pet, they should consider insurance. It's not compulsory, we can only advise that they should consider it. What they have to, I suppose, look at is the worst case scenario of what may happen and what they may wish to achieve in a situation where their pet suffers a serious injury or a long-term illness. So the first thing to say is people need to kind of consider, do they want to do this? And if they do, then the next thing I think they need to do is to do their own research and find what policy they think suits them. So the words I use there is compare and contrast the various policies that are on the market, because all the policies are different, they all are nuanced differently, they all have different features, and one might suit one might not suit another. And as I said there before, they vary from limited to open-ended. So, and it is important as well, if people are going to get insurance, to realise that there are limitations. Policies don't cover routine things like vaccinations, worming, food, prescription diets, or anything like that. And also it's important for people to be aware that the policies do require that the pet's health is maintained and monitored, and that those vaccines are kept up to date as a requirement of the insurance. So just to be aware that first and foremost, for the people to go and read up the policies, check out what they think suits them. They may well have queries, talk to the insurance companies, talk to their vet, but check out everything first.
I suppose, well, another point to mention is like I'm very lucky to have I have the pet insurance for Bruno. We never had pet insurance for Milly, because when Milly came to us from her previous owners, she didn't have it and she was too old. There is an age limitation on when you can actually take out insurance, isn't there?
Correct. There's various limitations. The first thing is, if you want to get maximum cover with no pre-existing conditions, the time to insure your pet is at the beginning. So you have a healthy pet with no known issues. Now, that's the time that you have no impediments to the insurance. Just to be aware with those policies that some companies have limitations. They don't take certain breeds, or they don't cover certain conditions for certain breeds. So just to be aware of that as well. But again, people need to check through individual policies. Now, most companies start insurance after around 8 or 10 weeks. Again, there's usually going to be a lead-in time of 2 or 3 weeks before the policy kicks into place. And again, allow for that. This other thing is, having taken out a policy, it is important that if you want to maintain continuity, that it must always be renewed on time and not allowed to lapse. Within policies, there's quite a lot of detail. The first thing is, all policies have an excess, an annual excess per condition, and this is important. It's not per all the illness in the year, it's per condition. So if a pet were to suffer from 3 or 4 different conditions during the year, there would be an excess applied to each and every one of those, and that again varies. The policy level in those varies, but it does exist. So but what's important to cover is that, again, vets fees are basically covered, but there's usually a cap of a certain amount. Things like third party liability is covered usually, death, the treatment of illnesses, emergency boarding, if holidays have to be cancelled over a pet for a reason, and also if a pet gets lost, there's usually some policy will include advertising to help recovery. So there's a huge amount of personal choice and options available, but the important thing there is for people to study them, examine them, see where they're going, see what suits them, and then make their decision.
So John, I want to go back there for a second, as you mentioned certain breeds and like certain conditions within certain breeds. Can you give us examples?
Well, I think some of the insurance companies may not be covering what are called brachycephalic breeds. These are breeds where they're dogs have been bred who have rather short airways and are more prone to respiratory conditions and end up sometimes having corrective surgery. These surgeries are where they have to have operations to widen their airways in their nasal passages, and sometimes what's called the soft palate. The soft palate is an area that extends back from the hard palate, which is the roof of a mouth. And if that, in these breeds, they may have these breathing difficulties, and some of the insurance companies, I think, will not cover them, or they will not cover them for that condition. So that's just something to be aware of, that there isn't, blanket cover out there for everything under the sun. That doesn't exist.
And John, we've seen, I suppose especially in recent years, we've seen all this crossbreeding going on. Like you have your Cavachons, you have your Cockapoos, all these what people refer to as designer breeds nowadays. Is that something that can impact pet insurance going forward? Because like these breeds that are being crossed, like God knows, with there being new breeds, God knows what the future implications and what the long-term effects could be.
It's a very good question, and I suppose crossing these various breeds may have mixed benefits, may be beneficial and detrimental, and I think the answers to some of those questions probably won't become obvious for some time. You take certain breeds who have very high incidence of maybe heart disease, like Cavalier King Charles, are synonymous with it as a condition with aging. If Cavaliers are bred with breeds of dogs that don't have this issue, are we going down the line where we will see the next generation and following generations who are healthier and who have less incidence of the condition and less severity? Equally, other conditions may become more pronounced. So I think each individual cross poses its own challenges of what may arise from it going forward. So I think it will be an interesting one over the next years to come, how that impacts on breeds, and I think it'll be a mixed bag.
And obviously that's going to affect like the actual cost of insurance as well, the excess, the conditions that are covered.
Yes, yeah. Again, insurance companies, I assume, monitor the situation constantly and are constantly looking at their policies and seeing where matters arise and where matters are changing and what, if there are new conditions or new difficulties or whatever. So they would be quite aware if something new is developing within a breed or within breeds. So they will be probably one of the first to notice these things, where what might be happening.
And I know myself, like it's actually like I said earlier, it's very beneficial. Like I have the insurance for Bruno. Bruno was in with yourself.
Yes.
Was a small little. Was that a small incision or was it?
In his case, that was a relatively small incision.
Yeah. But like the insurance was great for that.
Yeah.
Like for Milly, like we didn't have it when she had pyrethrum. Yeah, and like again, like you do. It's only in, I suppose, when you go to use it.
It's only when you go to use it that you appreciate it.
Yeah.
And again, not that one wants to have to use it, one hopes that one doesn't need it. But basically, I suppose, you can almost compare the insurance of pets to having a health insurance for yourself. But basically, if I were to sum it up in a few words, insurance of your pet is offering the owner peace of mind as regards if something bad happen, if something untoward happens, that we have cover. And it also means that you're able to go into a vet and say, I do want you to find out, do your damnedest for this pet. We will do whatever's necessary. Yes, x-ray and do the blood tests. We might have to go for a scan. We might need this. And there's peace of mind for the owner. And they know then that they're able to do the very, very best for their pet in those circumstances, and that there's no limitations within reason then of affecting the treatment. So from their point of view, yes, it's very, very good.
And especially if, like, say, if it's something that's discovered that they have a long-term illness.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the after costs of that illness as well.
If you have a long-term illness, particularly if it is diagnosed and becomes clinically early in the pet's life, there's going to be considerable drug costs for the lifetime of the pet. And again, I come back to things like where the dogs have heart conditions diagnosed early in life, and particularly large breeds where there's larger volumes of medicines required. Anything like that where you have ongoing medication, it's going to be substantial over time. So because it's ongoing, and again, that's where your policy, once it has kicked in, and once you have a policy that is offering lifetime cover, and this again, I go back to that some policies may not offer that, and so they would have an opt-out clause when the policy comes up for renewal. So again, it is very important to know what type of policy you are getting, that it does offer a full range of cover long term, that you're not going to lose on the policy as a result of a diagnosis. Your premium may alter, but the cover will be there.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, it just like, especially as dogs get older, a lot of breeds are probably more prone to more conditions as they get older.
Yeah, but most conditions are going to become more pronounced with age. First of all, most conditions like arthritic conditions, joint conditions, even dogs that have dysplasia, whether it's hips or elbows, are usually going to become more pronounced with age. Heart conditions are going to be more pronounced. We haven't mentioned it, but we'll say skin conditions, which again can be really long term and require a lot of management. They can arise from quite an early age, and in some cases can be really long term and permanent. And again, you're talking about long term medication and control. So again, that's where your insurance is extremely important in controlling those issues and giving the owner peace of mind.
You mentioned skin conditions there, right?
Yes.
So you have a dog who has a skin allergy, which could be due to food.
Yes.
Now, what would happen in that case there if you decided that you didn't want to actually change your food? Like, obviously it's detrimental to the dog's health, but from an insurance point of view, if the insurer found out that you weren't actually following, I suppose, say your advice, the vet's advice, and going on a specific diet?
Well, the diet won't be covered anyway, because that's food, and food won't be covered. I think we'll say that the thing about skin cases is that they're long term, and I think it's the medicine part will be covered. And okay, there is a whole range of medicines out there, and changing and evolving the whole time. Like the new medicines have come on the market even this year that are making a difference in a lot of these allergy cases. But yes, again, where your insurance comes in is if you have a case and you suspect allergies and you owner's keen to find out. Again, allergy testing is an expensive process, and sometimes people want to go down that route. That's expensive, and then they may go further to try and desensitize the pet as a result of that information. So all of that is expensive. Again, that's where your insurance is extremely valuable in dealing with those sort of scenarios where you have ongoing treatment and medication, to keep the policy in date as well. Because if a policy is allowed to lapse and you go to renew it, well then you have to declare then that there was a condition. Even if it lapsed by only a day or two, it's now a new policy, and there will be possible exemptions then for previous conditions. So owners need to know that.
Okay, and John, what would be your number one tip? I suppose obviously have pet insurance, but what would be your number one tip this evening to pet owners in regards to pet insurance?
I think if at all possible, have it. If at all possible, take out insurance when you're while the puppy is young, before it has any known medical issues, while it's healthy, and ideally go for a policy that offers lifetime cover, so that there are going to be no issues down the road with whatever may arise, that you will be able to keep cover maintained. So I think that's probably the number one piece of advice. And I suppose then people taking out insurance should probably need to consider, I suppose, what type of pet maybe they're going for as well, and maybe to do their own research on that certain pets are obviously less likely to get certain conditions than others.
And as I said, there's have compare and contrast as well.
Compare and contrast the policies, and again, it can be quite technical and probably something that someone needs to sit down and look at very carefully, maybe write it out, examine it, and maybe make some phone calls and check out the detail of the policies so that you know exactly what you're covered for, that you're aware of the excesses, and also that excesses tend to increase after a certain age, and that might vary again with the policy. It might be 5 years, 6 years or 7 years, where not only is there an excess but there's another percentage that's not covered, and again that varies from company to company. So basically the whole thing is that the owner needs to sit down, study very carefully, read the policies in detail, and again, if they have policy with an insurance company that is doing pet insurance, I think they may, as a result of insuring with them, get a discount. And also, if you have more than one pet, I think some of the insurance companies will also offer a discount where there's a number of pets being insured together.
And so, I'm fairly sure if you have your car insurance policies, I'd say there's a couple of companies that do pet insurance and do car insurance,
yes,
and they also offer a discount for
I think
things
so.
like that.
Yes. So the more insurance you have with them, probably the better your deal is going to be.
The more money you're giving them, basically, the better the deal.
The better the deal, exactly, for them and for you to do more business together. So that's where it comes from.
All right, John, any last thoughts you want to add on pet insurance?
No, except to tell people, go out, consider the pet they're getting, consider what the issues might arise with it, and consider insurance. And okay, there might be people who say, well, we don't need insurance, but it won't be an issue. So be it. But if you think that veterinary fees unexpectedly could pose a problem, it is very worthwhile considering having that insurance in place. And you know, most people usually pay it on a monthly basis rather than an annual basis. But you know, it's up to people, I suppose, to examine their own circumstances and what the impact would be for them if they suddenly found themselves having a large bill as a result of their dog getting knocked down or having a serious injury or illness. You know, maybe that would require a lot of hospitalisation, and like that, what we mentioned earlier, the blood tests, the scans, the x-rays, and all of that, when it's all put together, how would that impact on them? So personal choice and compare and contrast.
That's fantastic, John. Listen, John Garrahy from Treaty Veterinary Clinic here in Limerick. Limerick. Thank you so much for joining us on the Big Bark this evening.
The Big Bark, listen up dog owners, it's for you, all you canine lovers. It's your favorite podcast, The Big Bark, with your host Darragh and canine co-hosts Bruno and Milly. The Big Bark.